Well, it's been a wild night across much of southeastern Australia and there's no sign of conditions letting up this morning as a cold front continues to move across the country, bringing with it destructive winds and heavy rainfall. Victorians are being told to stay home and avoid unnecessary travel as storms sweep across the state. In fact, the winds are so strong they've been likened to a Category 2 cyclone.
Tasmania is also bearing the brunt of the weather with evacuation orders along the Derwent and Styx rivers, and it follows a chaotic weekend with hundreds of calls to the SES and tens of thousands without power. It's a fast-moving situation this morning and we'll have full coverage for you, starting with Selina Ross, who's at an evacuation centre in the Derwent Valley, and Mietta Adams in Melbourne. Good morning to you both. Selina, to you first. How things developed overnight there in Tasmania?
Well, this area that I'm in here in New Norfolk, we're outside the evacuation centre here. This has been downgraded to a watch and act from an emergency last night. But further upriver, it is still an emergency warning with people told to evacuate from their homes. We don't have a clear picture just yet of how things have gone overnight, but we understand that there are about 70 homes that the SES was concerned about yesterday, and they went and visited those properties and told people to evacuate, and they were hopeful that most of those people had left their homes. The concern there was either that the houses would be inundated or that they would be isolated as the floodwaters cut off roads. So, you know, this early in the morning, we're trying to get a clear idea of what has been happening overnight. It's not raining now, which is good, but the rivers around this area are already so swollen that the concern is that those levels are still rising and that floods could still occur. While this area is still at a watch and act, there are also plenty of other communities around Tasmania that are also at watch and act levels, and there were destructive winds across the state, particularly in the north and northwest last night as well, with many more trees coming down and blocking roads. And there is still a severe weather warning in place for the Bass Strait Islands and King Island, for Bass Strait Islands and all of the west coast of Tasmania. There are about 38,000 properties without power at the moment, with over 200 outages right across the state. So we have been dealing with this for, it feels like almost a week already, but this is still continuing, and emergency services are going to still be watching and seeing how things go throughout the day and seeing whether any of those watch and acts do pick up even further.
All right, Mietta, what are conditions like in Victoria, waking up this morning to lots of trees and all sorts of things across the road? That wind was howling last night, wasn't it?
Yeah, it sure was, Bridget. It was a hugely gusty night last night. Victorians are waking up to the 10th consecutive day for severe wind warnings for most parts of the state. Now, last night at St Kilda Marina, they recorded winds up to 113 kilometres an hour, and up at Falls Creek, it actually reached 131 kilometres an hour. A new watch and act to prepare to take shelter has been added to Melbourne and surrounding suburbs, as well as down in the Mornington Peninsula and in Wilson's Prom. Now, the SES has also been kept extremely busy with 900 calls since midnight. In the past 24 hours, they've had 980 calls for trees alone and 250 for building damage. And that's similar to this house here in Parkdale, here in Melbourne's southeast, where the bricks have fallen out from this house. Now, the SES COO, Tim Weebush, has said this is one of Victoria's most extreme and significant weather events of the calendar year, and that we haven't seen gusts like this since 2021. There's also been 60,000 Victorians that are also waking up without power, and we've been warned it could take days for that to come back on. The advice remains the same, and that is to avoid travel where possible, look out for debris on roads, and never to enter floodwaters. And we're hoping that as the day moves on, that these winds start to ease from the afternoon into the early evening.
Mietta Adams and Selina Ross, thanks very much for keeping us updated. And Nate's with us now. How long is this all going to last for, Nate? It's pretty extreme.
Yeah, as you heard from Mietta there, Bridget, it's likely we'll see the last of it by the time we get into the end of today, but it is going to be a long day ahead for large parts of the southeast. The warnings extend from South Australia right through Victoria up into southern New South Wales, and now for the Bass Strait Islands and the west of Tassie. That was just eased a short while ago. Now, we are expecting to see damaging wind gusts continuing to 100, 110 kilometres an hour, particularly over elevated ground, but The Bureau still not ruling out some destructive winds here and there in excess of 130 kilometres an hour associated with thunderstorms coming through. Now, Tassie has absolutely been soaking this weekend. We've got well in excess of 60 millimetres in some of the gauges on top of the rain that was already falling since, well, before 9 a.m. yesterday. More rain today, and the flood situation is widespread across the state. We've got flood watches still in force, minor, moderate and major flood warnings across several rivers. Of course, that emergency evacuation order as well. It's not the only thing we're dealing with either. Even New South Wales is getting involved with this one, team. Not just the winds in the south, but the fire danger too. We're talking extreme for parts of the Shoalhaven and Illawarra district just south of Sydney. It is going to be a very busy day, but that low and the associated frontal system is going to move off. We should hopefully be done with the warnings by late tonight. Updates though right through the morning as they come in.
And we'll see a lot more of you over the morning.
You certainly will.
Thanks very much. Good stuff.
Well, let's get some more news now. A search and rescue operation will resume this morning for a teenage boy who was swept off the coast at South Australia's popular tourist town of Victor Harbour. Emergency crews, including police, Pol Air and the local Sea and Rescue Squadron, are searching an area close to Granite Island. SA Police say the alarm was raised around 3 p.m. yesterday after the boy was seen falling into the water.
An Australian woman has died while scuba diving at one of Bali's most famous dive spots. Bali police say the 64-year-old woman was 8 minutes into the dive when she quickly ascended to the surface, followed by her dive guide. Witnesses say she then collapsed while trying to get back onto the boat. The woman was pronounced dead at a local hospital.
Prime Minister Anthony Albanese says the federal government will not intervene with WA's juvenile justice system following the death of a second young detainee within 12 months. WA Greens Senator Dorinda Cox called for urgent action by the Commonwealth after the 17-year-old boy was found unresponsive in his cell at the Banksia Hill Youth Detention Centre on Thursday. Mr Albanese says the Commonwealth will work with state and territory governments on the issue.
The states run the juvenile justice system and run services. The Commonwealth is not good at running those grassroots services. They need to be closer to where people are.
Liverpool Council in Sydney Southwest will today find out if it will successfully stop the New South Wales government from suspending its councillors and delaying its election. The council took local government minister Ron Honig to court in response to an interim report that alleged potential maladministration and/or corruption. A judgment is expected to be handed down this afternoon.
A program allowing Centrelink recipients to pre-book and self-manage appointments online has now been rolled out to more than 300 service centres across Australia. People can now book an appointment via phone or face-to-face with a staff member at their local service centre and can book, reschedule or cancel appointments via the MyGov or Centrelink Express Plus mobile app.
And actor George Clooney has paid tribute to US President Joe Biden over his decision to step aside from November's election after an opinion piece by the actor in July ramped up pressure on him to drop out. Clooney's New York Times op-ed in the wake of Mr Biden's disastrous debate with Donald Trump said the president was no longer the same person who won the White House back in 2020.
You know, it's very hard to let go of power. You know, we know that. We've seen it, you know, all around the world. And for someone to say, I think there's a better way forward, that's all the credit goes to him. And that's really the truth. And all the rest of it will be long gone and forgotten.
In Israel, thousands of protesters have taken to the streets calling for a hostage release deal after Israel recovered the bodies of 6 hostages, including an Israeli American. Our North America Bureau Chief Jade Macmillan joins us now from Washington. Jade, the situation in Israel has certainly escalated in the last few hours.
Yeah, these are believed to be some of the largest demonstrations to have taken place in Israel since the October 7 attacks in Jerusalem. People have protested outside the residence of Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, and in Tel Aviv, a major highway has been blocked. Now, these demonstrations come after the bodies of 6 hostages who were being held by Hamas were recovered from Gaza. The Israeli military believes that they were killed only in the last few days. And these tens of thousands of people taking to the streets are demanding that the Israeli government do more to try to reach an agreement to bring all of the remaining hostages home. There is a lot of anger being directed towards Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. He has said today he's blamed Hamas for the stalled negotiations, and he said, quote, "Whoever murders hostages doesn't want a deal." But these demonstrators are determined to keep up pressure on the Israeli government. One of the country's biggest trade unions is planning a major protest, a strike that is expected to begin within hours. That could lead to Israel's main airport being shut down and also closures across other parts of the economy as well.
Yeah, look, just seeing some of the pictures there, a huge amount of anger in Israel. And Jade, how's the US responding to the deaths of the hostages?
Well, one of the hostages whose bodies was recovered from Gaza was that of Hersh Goldberg-Polin. He was a 23-year-old American citizen. He was at the music festival that Hamas attacked on October 7, and he lost his arm in that attack. But his parents had been desperately hoping that he would be released alive. They have really helped to lead a global campaign to get all of the hostages home. They spoke only recently in a very emotional address at the Democratic National Convention. The President, Joe Biden, has released a statement saying that he is devastated and outraged by Hersh Goldberg-Polin's death. He says that he's gotten to know his parents and that they've been relentless champions for the release of all of those being held captive. The President went on to say that, make no mistake, Hamas leaders will pay for these crimes. He has not expanded on that at all. The only other information we have from Joe Biden is that he has spoken to the parents and that he says work will continue to try to reach a ceasefire agreement that would see the hostages come home.
Jade, thanks very much.